Welcome to the Life Illuminated podcast. I'm Maggie Kelly, your host, and I'm delighted today to welcome Monique Pliakos to the show. Monique is a specialist in hypnotherapy and the ability to help us reduce our stress. Boy, oh boy, do we all need you. She works as a tarot card reader as well, and something that's a new term for me called an Orgonite. So we're going to
Yes.
welcome Monique to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here. And thank you to the listeners for tuning in.
Well, tell me a little bit about what got you started in hypnotherapy. Let's start there.
So I began reading tarot when I was a teenager, and I learned about Orgonite and helping people with that. And my husband and I were watching a documentary about Michael Newton and past life regression and the life between lives. And my whole life, I've always had a drive to help people, but I felt like I hadn't quite found the right fit inside my little puzzle that I try to put together in my life. And I watched this documentary, and it was just like this light bulb went off of that's it. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. And like, because everything that was coming up just, it felt like it hit memories I didn't know I had. And it just felt right for me. So I thought, okay, I'm going to look into this. So I started reading about hypnotherapy. I looked into the Michael Newton Institute, and to go there, you have to become a certified hypnotherapist. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to do this. I found somebody I could learn from. So the next year, I was able to get in and start my classes. And it's a lot of work to become a hypnotherapist. And basically, we're all hypnotized. We get hypnotized all the time without even knowing it. You can, learn how to hypnotize somebody on YouTube, but it's once you're in, that's where the therapeutic part comes. And so I learned not just how to hypnotize people, but how to actually help them and different ways to help them once they're in hypnosis. And I got my certification through IACT, which is the International Association of Counselors and Therapists. And I've been able to help people since.
That's amazing. So let me ask you, since perhaps our listeners have no understanding of what we're even talking about as we get into this. So talk to me a little bit about why hypnotherapy, because you mentioned that once you're in, that's when the therapeutic process begins. So, and you also said that we're all hypnotized a lot of the time anyway, which boy, oh boy, I certainly agree with. But tell us a little bit about why would somebody want to come to hypnotherapy, and what kind of rewards or things might they discover?
I'll try to make it as simple as possible. Either you want to make a change for yourself or you're looking for answers. Those are the two big things. Most people think of hypnotherapy, they think of quitting smoking or losing weight. And I can help people with that. My big thing is helping them find what they need as a person, what they need physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. What kind of things do they need to get to where they want to be? Unlocking their power and their potential. So that's really what I enjoy helping people with. And a lot of times people think, I don't know what I need. I just know I need to change. And it can be as broad as that. And what we do is we go into hypnosis and we talk to yourself. You're literally having a conversation with your subconscious or different parts of yourself. And you find out this is what I need. And it's not just this is what I need, but how do we realistically get there? Because if it was that easy, you would have done it already. So we have to find a way that works for that individual to actually obtain their goal. Like, how do we get there in baby steps? And
So let me ask
I
you a
tell
question.
people, yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Let me ask you a question. So when we are hypnotized, I teach meditation, so I'm very familiar with being able to move into higher states of consciousness. And I'm understanding, at least from my very novice interpretation of hypnosis, is that the idea is to quiet the mind enough to be able to reach that higher self, yourself, your intuitive self, in hypnosis so that when you ask those sorts of questions, the answers come from your higher self.
Yes. And it's not necessarily quiet the mind, it's occupy the conscious mind so the subconscious can come through. And that's the trick. And everyone is different in how they do that. So it's finding a way that works for each individual.
Okay. Okay. And so when you listen to this particular past life regression um podcast or documentary from Michael Newton, what do you think got triggered in you? You said you sort of felt like there were memories you didn't even know were there that got sparked or got triggered. Can you speak to that a little bit?
I absolutely. I've always believed in past lives. Even when I was younger, I just knew that certain things happened in a past life. And that's why I am the way I am. And I know, like, I just knew that there were aspects of myself and my family and people I knew who things happen in a past life. And we have to work on this now so we can heal those issues. And I've had dreams where, I've talked about this with friends and colleagues about, I think sometimes our past life memories come through dreams, but it's almost like in modern times. So the people there, it's happening in a modern time, but it's people from past lives. And you're kind of going through these memories and it makes no sense because you're taking people in situations from past lives in your modern day within your dream. And that can throw people off. So I felt like it just felt right for me. Like, this is what I should do. So I also do past life regression. So I help people because with past life regression, traumas can happen, things can happen that carry over into the current life. And what we have to do when that happens is when they're regressed into that back life, into that past life, close the door on it, say, nope, this belongs here. Close that door. Don't let it come back.
So, okay, so I think I understood two things. One is some of the past life events that occur, we want to heal. And then some we also want to put in their place as this is done and over with. Let's move along.
Exactly.
And when we're talking about, just for the audience, when we're talking about past life, we are talking about reincarnation. That today, sitting here, we have all been reincarnated from a different life in the past. And that's literally what that means, past life. And past life regression, meaning we can go back and tap into what that last or many previous lives might have been about and bring them forward, examine them, and see.
I, I, I was going to say exactly. And the interesting thing is sometimes people regress and they don't have a past life. This is their first life. And when I was learning past life regression, my instructor said he worked with a woman who had a past life experience, but nothing made sense. And as they got deeper and deeper, they discovered it was a program memory into her human consciousness that was given to make her feel that she fit in more here because this was her first time on earth. And I did a past life regression for myself where I was in a life before I even incarnated on earth. So it's not just necessarily always here in this life or, well, here in this human earthbound lives that we've had. And time isn't linear, it's happening everywhere all at once. So you can go into future lives. It's never recommended to go into your current future life because that's a dangerous thing, but you can go into future lives. So there's so much you can do and experience because in your mind, you're not bound by time. And I just want to jump ahead and say, if anyone is listening and they say, well, is this real? Is past life regression, is it true? Is it real? There are people who have been regressed who look up the names, the dates, the places of what they got. And it turns out, yes, there is documentation of it. That's not going to happen for everyone. But this is what I say. It doesn't matter if it's real or not. as long as it helps the person. Because whether it's really a past life or it's really something that happened, or it's just your subconscious creating context for you to be able to process that information, as long as it helps, it shouldn't matter, because the person's having a beneficial experience that is helping them heal and grow.
Right, right. I agree with you. One of the things you said, which I wanted to just back up and talk about, was you said it's a dangerous place to go into your future life of the life you're currently living.
Yes.
Can you speak to that? And how does that challenge those of us who are a bit psychic?
There's a difference between psychicness and knowing, and having a full conscious experience of the life you're currently living and seeing a futuristic outcome, especially of your death. Because there's different trains of thought with timelines, and people think you can change your future, you can change timelines, and I think that's true. But the ultimate question is, if you see your death in this life, let's say I get hypnotized to see when I die in this life, and I say, oh my gosh, I'm going to die in a car accident next week. So I think I'm just not going to go in the car. Then I won't get killed. But then it'll say, the question is, okay, but are you just never going to go in a car again? Or would something else happen because that's your time to go? Or is it just anytime next time you're in a car, something could happen? Like, we don't know the outcome, and it's not really fair to do that to yourself, to worry yourself. And because most people are afraid of death, that's something I've worked on. I don't care. I'm not afraid. I think the biggest problem for me is not me dying, but my family having to deal with that, because I have 3 young kids, my husband, my parents, my brother. And that's the biggest issue I personally have, is just leaving them behind. But I'm not afraid of death. It's just a new beginning. And I don't think it's anything people should necessarily be afraid of. It's just everyone and everything eventually dies, but it's not, to me, a permanent negative thing. It's just a new chapter of a new book and a new beginning. So to want to find out, yeah, like, what's going to happen? Am I going to be rich, successful? Am I going to get this? It's nice to know, but it's also, to me, starting to cross a line of ethical behavior, because I just don't see a benefit. I see more problems occurring if you try to bring someone into the future of their current life.
Yeah. And I would have to agree in terms of the vast majority of people being afraid of death. And I practice Buddhism, and the number one teaching in Buddhism is impermanence, right? And so nothing, doesn't matter what it is, joy, sadness, grief, compassion, love, none of it lasts. And the sooner that we can all get behind that, the easier it is to live this life as fully as you can, and understand that that beautiful rose out there that's blooming isn't even going to last through the week.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
like humans, for the most part, so many humans, they get that, flowers, they from seed, they bloom, they grow, they wither and die. Even trees and perennials, it's like they have their cycle of death and rebirth, so to speak. Animals die. It's like, but humans can't grasp that. I'm going to die and I have to accept that someday. Like, and they treat it like it's such a negative thing. And it's not. It's not a bad thing, because I think the most important thing to keep in mind with that is, as long as you're living your life to its fullest, you're being a good person, you're doing the best you can for yourself and others. And when you live like that and you're living a fulfilled life, nothing's going to be perfect, but knowing you do the best that you can with what you've got, that's living,
But I
enjoying
also
life.
think that the idea of reincarnation makes death and dying so much easier to absorb, to digest.
Yes, because the concept, and with feedback from people who've done the life between lives, Most people have the experience of I pass, I move on. I reviewed my life. I had my goals and objectives that I wanted to accomplish here. And how did I do with that? And there's no like, oh, you did really bad. It was like, you didn't quite get that, but that's okay. We'll try again. So there's not like a judgment that's put here on earth of good and bad. It's just, it is or it isn't. And if it's not, okay, we get to try again.
Yeah. Yeah. And it certainly makes you relax. At least for me, it's like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm in the process of watching my mother die. And she has until about September. And right now for our listeners, it's June. And it's not sad. It's not sad. She is 86. She's lived a beautiful life. She even has a little boyfriend at 86. Everyone loves my mother. She's traveled the world. She has 5 children, 14 grandchildren, 1 great grandchild. And she's just watching her. She's just had a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful life. And will I miss her? You bet. But she's ready and I'm okay. It's okay.
Exactly. And that's the thing that sometimes, like a lot of the hypnotherapy, a lot of the therapeutic aspect is letting go. You have to be okay with just letting go. And it sounds like your mom's okay with letting go of this life, and you're okay with letting go of her in this life. And a lot of times it's so hard to forgive and let go of things. And that's a lot of the work for a lot of people, whether it's forgiving others or one of the hardest things for people is forgiving themselves. That's
Yeah.
tough for people. But when you get to that point, it's almost like a weight gets lifted off of you. And I'm sure your mom going into this transitional phase of not dying, but just moving forward. And for me, I hope, when my time comes, I have the opportunity to be excited about it. Like, I get to move on, like this is something new for me. And again, it is hard sometimes for family members, but it sounds like you've got it. You're happy for her. She's ready, you're ready, and that's the best mentality you can have. Not everyone gets the opportunity to be able to prepare themselves to let go, and
Right.
that makes it difficult too. But I mean, I've done work with people where when they're in hypnosis, we call in their ancestors and they get to talk to their ancestors. They get to talk to their loved ones who have passed away. I do one thing, it's a spiritual connection. We call in your guides, your higher self, like your dragons, your fae, your ancestors, like everyone who's there for your highest good, your angels, everybody. And you get to talk to them. You just ask one to step forward at a time, and you get to talk to them. You can ask them questions. You can find out things that you were curious about, maybe how your loved ones are doing, and ask them, have that conversation with them. And again, people will say, but is it real? At the end of the day, it's real to the person having that experience, and the information that comes up, whether we're regressing to childhood before people have memories, regressing to a past life, bits of information come up that tend to be true. I was doing a session with a friend, and she had during her session a spontaneous past life regression come up where all of a sudden she was in a past life. Things that were coming up during her session had to do with this past life. And because we went through with this past life regression that just popped up, she got so much information that played into her current life that was able to help her. And the information that came up, it was stuff that she didn't know. And then we looked it up. We're like, oh, yeah, here's this area. She had no idea. She's like, I've never heard of this body of water before. I didn't know what it was, but she knew. She didn't consciously know it, but it was coming out.
My
So I think
understanding too is that for those of us who have present day memories of past life regressions, typically it happens for children, those who are younger. Well, and my understanding, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, is because they're so new to this plane of existence and their memories are much fresher. And the more time they spend on this earthly plane, the more that memories start to fade.
It seems like we come in here with a type of amnesia, but the kids, because they're newer here and they're more open, they haven't been as programmed yet. They're able to open up and remember things that maybe as adults we have a harder time remembering. And I also think that children are more spiritually connected. More children see spirit. When I was a kid, I would see fairies. I would talk to the trees and rocks. Like, we would have conversations. And I was very in tune with nature. But when you grow up and you're told that's weird, or don't tell other people about that, that's not right, you start to get turned off and you have to normalize and adjust yourself to fit in. Unless, you want to deal with being ridiculed. And a lot of people, myself included, no, I have to be normal. Same thing with reading tarot. I started reading tarot at 19 years old. When I would do readings, the people, my friends, they would get so freaked out and they would look at me with, the look was like a combination of like almost disgust and anger, and like a I don't believe this look. And they'd look and say, "How do you know that?" And I stop and go, "It's not me. It's the cards. Don't get mad at me." you know, because people don't know how to react to things like that. And I think nowadays people are getting more open minded, but back in like the 80s and the 90s and even the early 2000s, at least in New England, there was a lot of, people who weren't quite open up yet on the East Coast. So we change our perspective, we change our thoughts, we change our openness to fit in. Little kids don't necessarily have all that programming. They're just open, they're taking everything in, and they have those fresher memories of everything else that still kind of resonates inside the subconscious and conscious mind.
Well, yeah, before the world tells them how to behave, how to play, how to act, how to react, how to live their lives, what life is supposed to look like, get married, have babies, finish college, all that. None of that's bad. It's just, is that necessarily why you're here? I don't know. That's someone else's prescription for your life may not be the life you were supposed to be living here on this planet and this plane of existence today.
Yes. And that's why I think it's so important to be open minded with things. With hypnotherapy, you have to be open minded for hypnotherapy to work. You have to be open to it. You have to want to be open to the thought that this could work. You also have to really trust the information that's there, because if you don't trust the information, it's not going to work. And you also have to be willing. If you're not willing to make a change, if you're not willing to do something, it's not going to work. So I tell my clients, you're going to have to do some work. Most of it's mental work. We're in hypnotherapy, but when things come up, that's kind of tough. It's emotional. That's work to deal with it. It can be exhausting. But my clients who do the work are successful. There are clients who don't want to do the work. Like their subconscious, the parts of them say, "This is what I need from you. I need you to do this." And then they don't go forward and do it. Well, you're not going to be successful because you're not giving yourself what you need. But when you put the work in, you're open to it and you're willing, it does work. And if you're making a change for somebody else and not for yourself, it's not going to work. So if your spouse is like, "You need to quit smoking," but you don't want to, and you think, "Okay, I'll try hypnosis." It's not like I speak magic words, snap my fingers, and boom, it's all better. No, you have to want it. You need to want it for yourself.
Yeah, it's, in a lot of ways, as a spiritual mentor and coach, that's the same thing. People first think you have to first get beyond this notion that everything in life is linear, kindergarten to first grade, second grade, that's the way it goes. from a spiritual perspective, nothing is linear and nothing is controllable. And to be able, it goes back to our conversation about death, to be able to let go and to understand, first of all, you're not in charge. As much as you think you are, you're not in charge. I hate to
Yes.
break the news to you, but the other piece is so many of us are gripped onto the edge of the table, attached to the outcome, the way it's supposed to look, the somehow preconceived ideas of how our lives are supposed to be lived, that letting go is pretty scary. It's
It
very
is. It's like,
scary to do.
absolutely. It's like, do you think water is like, no, I need to go in this direction? It's like, water doesn't say, oh no, I need to go here. It just goes. It just goes where it goes. It goes with the land. It just does what it does. And the more you try to control things, ask anyone. I used to be a control freak. If I went on a plane, I wanted to be in the cockpit because if something was going to happen, I wanted to know so I could try to do something about it. Control freak. And over the years, I learned to let things go. I can't control everything. And I was mentally so much healthier because instead of worrying every day, what am I going to do? How am I going to do this? How's this going to work? It was just, you know what? It is what it is. I would have plan A through Z and then backup plans A through 100, B1 through 100 to Z1 through 100. It is what it is, but I was able to go with the flow. So I could have all these plans, but nothing went that way. I could
Well, I
roll
think
with it.
there's a distinction between being committed and attached
Mm-hmm.
and committed and unattached,
Yes,
right? So
exactly.
I don't think that there's any possible way for us to set an intention and expect that it's going to be fulfilled when we're attached to the outcome. It's only
Exactly.
when we set the intention and let go of how it plays out that the intention has any possibility of germinating and growing.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's the thing, because sometimes I always say everything, like when I'm working with clients, before I even start, I ground myself, I say a prayer, and I connect with my guides and ask them to guide me. And as long as it's within the highest good for myself and my client, connect with their guides so they can help you guide me so I can help them. It's got to be, everything that's done has to be for our highest good. When I was younger, and this goes into more witchcraft, so to speak, but when I was younger, dabbling with witchcraft, doing love spells, you have a crush on a boy and you really want him to like you. Setting that intention and saying this has to be the outcome isn't good, because you know what? Yeah, I got the guy and he was a total jerk. He was awful. So I would have been better off not dating him. But I had to push my agenda, my will, my outcome of what I wanted, but it wasn't in my highest good. So when you can say, this is what I want, however it comes to me in whatever way, shape, or form, however I get there, I'm open. Okay. Yeah. You're looking for love. It might not be this guy over here, but just say, make it more broad. I want romance in my life. I want love in my life. Be open to what comes to you. Yes, it will come, but you can't dictate every single little detail of how it gets to you and what it is. And
Yeah.
that's the same with hypnotherapy. It's like, you think you're in control, but you're not. It's like you are, but in the grander universal scale of it, it's like, no, things happen as they happen.
So what else can you tell us? How should we be living a life illuminated?
To me, living a life illuminated is being able to see things for what they really are. And to do that, you have to look at it with all different perspectives. And that comes to that open mindedness, being open, being willing. You can't be so rigid all the time, so controlling all of the time. So when you really think about it, we're people, we're living in this 3D world where we need money because we have to buy food and we need shelter. And we're just trying to get by, doing the best that we can. People are so stressed out. When you when I was growing up, if I went to work, the only way they could get a hold of me was if they called my house. And if I wasn't there, well, oh, well. But now we have our smartphones and our laptops and tablets, and everyone's connected to us 24/7. I don't think that's how we're supposed to be living life. I think being able to connect with each other with technology that we have, that's fabulous. But we also have to be able to turn it off and go within ourselves. And that's why one of the reasons why I call my hypnotherapy business Understandings Hypnosis, because we don't understand things, we understand. We take it, we put it within ourselves, and we hold it if it resonates and holds true. And if not, we let it go. And that's what we really should try to do with our lives, is say, hey, this isn't working for me. I'm going to let it go. I need to take care of myself. So, you know what? I'm going to let go of my cell phone for 20 minutes and go do something for me. It's about being able to recognize when you need to take care of yourself, self-care, versus when you need to take care of other things. And a friend of mine said to me one day, Monique, you are a giver more than anyone I've known, but you can't drink from an empty cup and you can't give from an empty cup. And that just really resonated with me, because how often are people just going and going and doing and doing? And how much do people really do for themselves? I look at hypnotherapy as self-care. You're doing something for yourself. Taking a hot bath at the end of a long day is self-care, but a lot of people don't do that. Talking to people about what's bothering you is a form of self-care. But people think, oh, well, I'm burdening others with my problems. There's so much that people should do for themselves to improve their lives and improve their spirit. And my goal is to remind people, like, hey, you can do that, but you have to take the time to do it for yourself.
Yeah, amen to that. Now, how can people find you, Monique?
You can find me at my website, understandingshypnosis.com. And if you're interested in tarot reading or any Orgonite that I make, you can go to tarotbymonique.com.
Oh, that's wonderful. Anything you want to leave us with? Although you
Absolutely.
just did.
Yeah, I was just going to say the biggest thing with self-care, knowing your worth. You're worth it. You're worth investing in yourself. And that just doesn't go for self-care. That goes business-wise. Invest in yourself. Romance-wise, invest in yourself. You can't do anything for anyone else unless you take care of yourself first. You go on an airplane, those oxygen masks come down. What do they say? Put it on yourself first, and then your children are the people you're responsible for. Take care of yourself. But I just hope that the people listening, if they don't recognize that already, I truly hope you recognize how important you are, how worthy you are to invest in yourself.
That's beautiful. Well, thank you so much for joining
Thank you.
us
Thank
today. It's
you.
been an absolute pleasure having you. And we look forward to having you join us again in the future.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Maggie, for having me on. And thank you to all the listeners.